Okay, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. This is the facilities workshop, October 16th. We have 4 items to present to you this afternoon. Our first 2 items are planning, and that's the district-wide redistricting, providing a status update. West Side K Relief Site, we're going to give you an update on our pursuits for that site. And then we have 2 design construction items. Denjon Middle School, we're going to run through our phasing plan for construction. And finally, Neo City Academy, we're going to provide you a project update. So with that, we'll start with our 2 planning items. I'll turn it over to our Director of Planning Services, Ms. Rhonda Blake.
All right, good evening. A quick update on district-wide redistricting. We came back to you in August, and on the first slide, we basically gave you the layout that we had worked with staff from July 2016 to July 2018 to come up with a preliminary start plan. We met with the superintendent in July. We met with the principals in July. The school board approved the calendar on August 2018. We had 2 meetings, September 11th and September 25th. On the 25th, they were ready to vote, so we canceled the meeting on October 4th. So on September 25th, we did take a unanimous vote for the plan that was proposed and presented to move forward to you as a public hearing on November 6th.
Excuse me. District, the attendance zone boundary for HRCS is Harmony Community School, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So basically, 3 of our 8 traditional middle schools were impacted. Those were Narcousie Middle School, Neptune Middle School, and St. Cloud Middle School. And then we had 1 K-8 school impacted, and that was Harmony Community School. We will be presenting the new proposed boundaries to you on November 6th. They will become effective for the 1920 school year. And the one thing we do want to point out is the attendance zone boundary for Harmony Community School does not change, but what would change would be the grade configuration. It would no longer be a K-8, it would go to a K-5. But their actual attendance zone boundary would stay the way it's drawn today. Provided the enrollment will allow us to do that, yes, we should be making that move. Also, one of the key things that the district-wide redistricting committee brought up was they wanted to make sure the board will still consider that the rising 8th graders would be allowed to stay back at their current middle schools, provided they filled out choice applications and they provided their own transportation. So that would also be part of the recommendation on November 6th. And well, I probably should, most of you are aware, we did have 1 parent notification letter go out incorrectly. And inadvertently, the second letter notified all the parents at Neptune Middle that they were being redistricted to Harmony when it should have said St. Cloud Middle. So we have put the corrective letter in the mail, and they should all be receiving that between yesterday and today. So I do know it created a couple of phone calls for a couple of you.
Before a letter goes out, does somebody proofread it?
We do. What happened is in the stuffing of the envelopes, they crossed up the envelopes. So we have a different process now to make sure that doesn't happen in the future.
Okay.
Yeah. So the letter was right.
No, I get it.
The letter was right.
The envelope was wrong.
People.
Was
No, I
incorrect, yes.
I get it. Okay.
So any questions? If not, I'll move forward to the next item. Okay. I believe it was about 45 days ago, we came to the board and we mentioned that we had an opportunity to pursue a piece of property on Yates Road in Kissimmee. The intent of the property was to relieve the Westside K-8 school. It was basically going to allow us to cut the attendance zone boundary in half, bring Westside down to its population the first time basically since it's been open, take their 18 portables out. We were going through the due diligence.
Wait, there's 18, why would you take them all out? Because it's only a matter of time until you start filling up another half dozen.
Well, right now, it would cut the population down, and
understand.
right now, most of what's being built out there are the vacation village and the short-term rentals. So we do believe most, if not all, of the portables would be removed based on the current projections if we were able to open this school.
And I just would remind the board that the current placement of the portables, because that land, that site is so tight, takes away a lot of their play amenities and activities, opportunities. It's a very restricted piece. So if we could get those off the basketball courts, for example, the kids could play basketball.
4 years from now, 5 years from now, I heard what Rhonda said. Just knowing the nature, you're going to put half a dozen of them there in 4 or 5 years anyway.
The infrastructure always remains in place. It's just a matter of
Okay,
pulling the leased
okay.
portables in and out.
Okay.
And if we see the need for them to stay, we weigh moving them out to move them back in versus letting them sit and to continue to pay the rent. So we do take that into consideration.
And if you recall, we completed a space reconfiguration last
Right,
summer.
I know.
So if we were to do something beyond that, additional portables, classrooms, what have you, we would have to address the core spaces as well, so that we have adequate dining areas, media center space.
Meanwhile,
that
sometimes
type
we
of
don't
thing.
address the core areas, but the kids come anyways, we still need the portables. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but,
Yes.
you know, that's just the nature of this school district.
Right. And from a topography standpoint, that's a challenging site to add additional portables as well. It's a very rolling, lots of elevation
But the point-
changes.
You got 14 now?
We have 18.
Okay, so if you get rid of 12, you still got 6.
He just doesn't want us to pull them out and have to immediately
Right,
put them
I
back in.
understand.
So we would definitely
no,
take that
and I
into
want kids to
consideration.
play, I
Yes.
get that too, but, you know, we're kidding ourselves if we think the school's not gonna be overcrowded again within 3 or 4 years.
Right.
So as we were moving forward with the due diligence on this property, the Phase 1 environmental did come in acceptable for the site. Couple of references to some gopher tortoises, but we've dealt with that in the past. We met with the staff at the city of Kissimmee. We showed them 2 test fits, and they were favorable to one test fit over the other. We were working with the FAA to get our building and crane height clearances, and everything was looking pretty satisfactorily. But yesterday, we did receive notification from the Kissimmee Gateway Airport, and the City of Kissimmee Land Development Code has a more stringent policy than the Florida statute. And based on the information that we have right now, it appears that the site will not be acceptable for an educational facility. So I am running the documentation through Frank. The owners of the property are here this evening, and they've also asked that maybe the board doesn't make a definitive no vote this evening on the property. They'd like to have some communication with the City of Kissimmee first. They just spoke to me right before the board meeting. So they are willing to let our letter of intent stand and to go a little further to allow a little more communication. But they'll yield to the decision of the board tonight if you want to go ahead and discontinue talks or see with a little more communication if the site is still viable.
How many miles?
What do you mean?
So the normal radius.
Oh, the state says 1.5 miles is the
That's
length of the
normal.
longest runway.
5 is the
City of Kissimmee went an additional
Where do we
5.
fall within the 1.5 and the 5?
Based on the letter,
Or is that the normal? Yeah.
it says we are within
I mean, what I'm saying is at
7,000
4.
feet from the landing
So
threshold.
that's mile.
Oh, so it's, yeah,
Yeah.
mile and a half. Right over.
Yes.
So do we need all that what if we gave up part of that property so that way they've still got their space that they need for their runway, but so we take a little less land and we can still fit a school in there?
So that's what we're kind of showing you on slides 8 and 9 to try to help the board have a better picture. So slide 8, of course, the X is the glide paths for the airport. So as you can see, by going 5 miles, they're pretty extensive. They do go all the way over to Point Santa Boulevard. And then slide 9, so the blue outline, which is kind of hard to see unfortunately, is the property.
Going back to slide 8, where's the property on slide 8?
It's right up in the X. Yes.
So-
Right up here in this
Okay,
area,
Yeah.
so over here,
It's
right in here.
okay.
So-
And what's the access road to that, to the
Yates
land?
Road.
Okay.
Hence the name Yates Road.
No, okay, I got it, thanks. And how many acres is that?
It's 40 and we're looking to purchase 20
Sorry.
for a K-8.
Laid yourself down.
20, and what's to the north of that?
So immediately south of that is Cameron Preserve, the new community built by the county.
Great, right.
Immediately west of it is Vineland Apartments, and north of it is open land that's also looking to be proposed for more apartments. And then immediately east of it is the Shingle Creek Landings Park owned by the county.
Have we talked to whoever owns the land that's looking to turn it into apartments, see if we can buy a piece of that?
It's the rest of the owner. So you actually want to go south. So on the next
Okay.
slide,
Okay,
so in the blue here is the 40 acres. So the crosshatch is the border of the glide path, and only this portion of the property is not in the glide path. So it's about a 75-25. So 75% of the property is in the glide path, about 25% of it is not in the glide path.
so why wouldn't we want to ask the city of Kissimmee for a variance that is just equal to what the state has? Do they let it be known that they're adamantly opposed to that? Or-
I believe that would be something we'd want to have further discussions with, because you would be asking for a waiver from a policy that is set.
But
and we
that's
would-
that's a city, the state and the FAA, we're okay with them, correct?
FAA, we were moving forward, and we had a pretty much preliminary approval that the crane heights wouldn't be an issue during construction of the
But
school.
that's just for the construction to make sure that we're doing something to address our cranes, visibility, so no aircraft will.
I mean, do we know if the city's got plans to extend the runway to 10,000 feet so 747s can land there? I mean, is that part of their thinking? I mean, I'm not.
Right. We don't have, I mean, we literally just received the letter yesterday. We had had a verbal warning as of last week, but I had not received anything in writing, so I believe that's one of the
Because the
reasons
city's
the
going to need
property
student
owners.
stations as badly as we do, and if we comply with the federal government and the state government, we're not asking to put a muffler shop there.
Right.
Yeah, it appears to be a Kissimmee Gateway Airport requirement, which is very strict, that educational facilities, public or private, cannot be sited in the glide paths.
So that's kind of where
And
we're
I'm
at.
assuming that's for safety concerns?
But homes can, so a kid can sleep in a house in the path, and that's okay. But they can't go to school during the day when there's warnings necessarily, so that if there's something, I don't know if something I'm missing, but,
You're correct.
okay.
And it was a surprise to me, in my dozen years in Orange County, we cited half a dozen schools in glide paths for the Orlando International and the Executive Airport.
I mean, I know the guy who runs the airport, I know the management of the city, I know all the elected officials. I think that we can prevail if we really, it's something we want to do, and they'd be willing, we're community partners with them. They're not, Dr. Pace, what do you think?
Judge Perry, in terms of the level of risk the district would assume if we asked for a variance, could you kind of weigh in on that?
If you ask for a variance and you say that there's a worst-case scenario, there's a plane crash, then you're going to have some liability up to the statutory liability that you would ordinarily face. You will expend, of course, money for legal fees of that nature. So the only saving grace is your statutory limits in liability. And hopefully, I'm not familiar with your insurance coverage, but that should take care of that. That's going to be your limit.
Thank you, sir.
I guess relative to that same question is, we need to know how many years that airport's been open. I don't know that, I've been here since 1995, I've never heard of a crash.
There was the one in front of the YMCA at Thacker in the last 10 years, Dr. Pace?
It's been since I was a superintendent.
And then they just landed the other emergency one on Martin Luther King right next to Thacker in the
But it
last
landed,
year.
it didn't crash.
Well, he lost the bottom of his plane.
Okay, but you didn't hit any buildings.
No, luckily.
Okay, I mean,
Okay.
we can live in fear and wonder, just like, okay, I think
No, I
that this is one of those things where if the FAA and the state says it's okay and it works for our purposes, I don't know why we wouldn't
And
do
that's
it.
something that we would need board direction from because of, the potential risk that it does put this board and future boards in. Certainly, we have the challenge of finding property for a school site on that side has been a real challenge. Obviously, the need to expand our opportunities, our seats in that area is significant. So it's really up to the board to
So-
provide direction to staff.
They've got a golf course they're not using now.
Do we know what the airport's strategic plan is for the next 5, 10, 15 years in terms of expansion?
I
or
could
what?
get that. I do not have it at this time.
That would be important to
Okay.
evaluate your risk, knowing whether or not they're going to bring in additional air traffic, whether or not they're going to expand or not expand.
I do know that is their plan. I mean, they've been trying to get a federal customs port there as well to allow more international travel out of there, and they have direct plans. They see it as an underutilized asset of the city of Kissimmee to expand traffic within the airport. I know those as facts. I've dealt with this before, the real estate arena and some of the things I've done from an economic development standpoint.
And
So they're
certainly
talking
if the
about
board-
charters?
They,
And that
they
check's
would
goes in
love
there
to.
now.
The question is, will it manifest and when? But that's their desire.
And to Mr. Weisharter's point, he's absolutely correct. The catch is, that's been their strategy for 15 years. So,
Again, the sellers are here and have indicated they would be willing to give us a little bit more time if you wanted us to follow up with some due diligence, but I wasn't going to direct staff to request a waiver without clear direction from the board.
Yeah, my personal opinion on it would be that we do ask the owners to remain patient with us, give us just a little bit more time. I have a meeting on Thursday morning that I can bring this up as well and maybe help from a different angle outside of my school board stuff and see if there's an opportunity for us to pursue another angle to try to have some relief provided for this.
and I've got a very good relationship with Mayor Alvarez. I'll be happy to talk to Mayor Alvarez about this and get back to you, Dr. Mays.
Okay.
So,
All right, so then I think we have direction.
All right.
Thank you, Rhonda.
All right, and that would be it for my items.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Blake.
Thank you.
So next up, we have Denjon Middle School. We're going to talk about our phasing. I'm going to ask our Director of Design and Construction, Mark Lockard, and the Project Executive with Pirtle Construction, Richard Rodriguez, to join us at the table.
Good evening, everyone.
And with that, Richard, why don't you take the helm and run through the phasing?
Well, first of all, we have started mobilization out on Denjon, so you'll see October dates kicking things off. So we're really at that point now. So we're really in the first phase.
remember, you got to live up to the last presentation.
Apologies for looking hot and flustered, but I had to walk the site to make sure that my fence looked like this. So we're out there and we're good.
You're fine.
Okay.
Look at Jay's shirt.
So what we did was that we divided the project into some major chunks, and we're going to transition, and we're going to affect, let's say, when students show up or faculty, where they're going to see something different. What you'll notice over the next couple of days or next week or so is going to be basically a barrage of signage, because we're big on making sure that we do wayfinding to let people know that this is where you're going to go and this is where we're going to go, and we'll have that put up. But if you look at phase 1A, we're going to commence with, they're kind of in two major portions. The one little box there will tell you that we're going to start, with 1A, and then that gives us a substantial completion date of that first phase, 7 of 2019. I wanted to
And
kinda-
1A and 1B start at the same time. That's why they're both phase 1.
Correct.
But 1A has a completion point. 1B extends beyond that.
Extends a little bit beyond that, absolutely.
Not to be confusing, but they start at the same time.
And part of, and the work that's going to be included in 1A is going to be the commencement of the renovation of Building 300, which is what turns into the administration. And early on, Mr. Allen, you remember what we said was that we need to make sure that as a school transitions, because it's a December turnover, that we don't expect an entire administrative staff to be able to kind of stop and go in the course of 2 weeks. So what we want to do is we want to start that building now, because we're going to deliver that building at the end of the summer of 2019. So it gives them 6 months or 5 months to move in, rather than them trying to all of a sudden now move in, and not be functional. Inside that phase in 1A, we also have the commencement of the addition to the gymnasium. And the idea there is, as well, is for us to start that construction and finish it over the summer, so that now when the kids come back in the fall, that they'll actually have the expanded gymnasium. The key for us to do that is the third bullet here, which is to commence the construction of the building, what we call 600, which is the chiller plant. We need to have an active central energy plant by the end of the summer, so that then we can put the new buildings, the renovated buildings, onto the new system. And this way, now what our idea is going to be to create a central hub in admin. So if you think of administration, it's always where you're going to have your IDFs, your MDFs, and that's kind of the heartbeat of that building. So that's going to be in place at the end of the summer.
I know this isn't on you, Richard, but is the chiller design completed?
Yes.
Yes.
Chiller
Okay,
design is
okay,
complete.
okay.
Shop drawings are being ordered. No DP, actually. We just gave Mark the initial draft for the deductive change
Who's the
order.
MEP?
ODP.
Oh,
Owner
Who's
direct
your-
person.
No, who's the mechanical engineer?
contractor?
Westbrook.
The contract, who does the design? Who's the mechanical engineer?
SGM.
SGM.
Okay, great. So we have ordered all of the stuff that we need, so the lag time to get it.
Yes.
Have started.
Okay,
Shop
great.
drawings, submittals
Absolutely.
have started.
It's great.
And those are priority 1 chillers. We've been limping those along, waiting for this project. Mostly DX units, so this is going to be a central chilled
So
water
we're mostly
system.
using DX units now.
We are using DX now, primarily, yes.
Okay, this should be better if we maintain everything right.
Yes, this
Okay.
will be a marked improvement, will be much more efficient.
Well, brand new chiller better be an improvement.
You know, one
Well,
of
with
the
the
things
energy
that-
codes, you really have no choice.
No, I get it. And better insulated buildings, no, I get it.
Knowing the schedule that we have in place, one of the things that we employ, and we understand, you know, what you can and you can't do, but knowing that we've submitted a GMP, everything looked good,
The
so we
design's
went
not
ahead.
on you, so.
No, absolutely, but to your point, how do I guarantee success? And what I did was that while we were negotiating our GMP, you know, I contacted the major players, which are going to be our structural OLP, and it's going to be our HVAC and electrical, and we sent them letters of consideration and intent, so they started their shop drawings. From our perspective, we understand that if it's completely on my risk, that we went ahead and told them to go ahead and get me shop drawings. But from our point, losing 2 or 3 weeks at the front side while I'm kind of getting started is where I don't want to ever lose
Is
time.
Westbrook doing the electrical and mechanical, or just mechanical?
No, just mechanical.
Who's
Terry's electric is doing.
Just a moment, we'd like to welcome Vice Chairman Mr. Thacker to the
Right on
meeting.
time. Did y'all start?
Yes.
I thought it was a 4:22 meeting.
And Pearl's on schedule with their schedule.
I'm sorry.
It's okay, how you doing?
So I wanted to paint that picture of what it's going to look like from now to the end of the summer, and that to us is critical for success. That we know that at the end of the summer that you're going to start occupying your building. So you're going to have your gymnasium, you're going to have your administration area. But if you look down on the next one, the next piece that we look at when we look at Phase 1B is that we're also over the summer months we're going to renovate the music building, because the music building in this scenario does not get an addition. It gets soft finishes only, and if all I'm doing is I'm plugging in a new mechanical system and I'm changing paint and soft finishes.
Fire
we can-
alarm, that's-
Yeah, we can do that in a matter of 2 months. We do it all day long. So so when they come back, we feel that it's going to be a benefit that they're going to see in their eyes. They're going to see, hey, listen, we just received 25% of our campus. Looking at Phase 1B, Phase 1B is basically isolates what the main building looks like. So although we're starting now in October, that Phase 1B is going to be the delivery of the main building. So come December of 2019, you basically have all operating buildings under your control, and that's going to be represented, as you see back here, in Phase 2.
And we've just shown you the footprints of these buildings because we didn't want to show the floor plans for security reasons.
Right.
Because these are public
Understand,
access.
understand.
So that's why they're blobs in here instead of the nice floor plans that you've probably seen recently, previously.
When you look at Phase 2 now, so now we've got the completion of 300 admin, you're looking at the completion of the locker rooms, as we indicated, a completion of building 600 chiller, which is required. We commenced the construction of building 200 and the connection to 300. So that's when we're going to start that piece of work. Is you know, as I give you back your campus, we're going to ask for us to receive 200. So when we receive 200,
So
then we.
most of the fencing stays in place, we just flip-flop. Now the construction's on the other side of the fence, and the new part we're turning over is on the new side.
Correct.
Where's the tilt wall construction going to be?
The tilt wall construction is going to start right now for the next 2 months. What you'll see is we're just going to be doing the demucking and doing a lot of major site work
Okay.
around the swale area in the back. Come December, we'll start our building pad and foundations, and that's going to start December 2019.
Okay.
We
Got
turn
it.
over building
Got it.
100. By that time, you're also going to receive building 200, which is the ESC wing, and any other incidentals as we then take the school and put them on the entire campus, and then we isolate ourselves to the front. Now, starting in January of 2020, that's when we'll come in and start to, I've got this down here, it's January of 2020, kind of runs into Phase 4. In January of 2020, what we'll do is we'll then encapsulate the Starship Enterprise, and then we'll start to take that down. We'll demolish that building, and in that period, right around the Christmas time, we're going to build, and you'll see it back over here on your Phase 3, we're going to build a temporary car loop, and we're going to keep the bus loop active. So we keep that active during the time of, let's say, January to June, because I need to be inside the space demolishing, but we still have to maintain access for parking, parent drop-off, and bus drop-off. Now, over the summertime, you're saying, well, you have a lot of work to do over the summertime. But if you think about now, all I've done is that I've built my parking on the inside of my fence. And if you go to the next one, this is where it becomes coordination becomes really critical. So we would have built the parking lot on the inside of my demolition space, and all I have to do over the summertime is then remove the temporary drives and then connect the interconnecting pieces. So I'm gonna build partial roads, I'm gonna have a temporary here, I'll build a parking lot, and I'll have the temporary still there. Over the summertime, I'll remove the temporary and I'll make the connections.
I got a simple question. Has KPD and the SROs seen this at all? Have we gone over this with them yet?
Yes.
Okay, so they're aware of it.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
That's all I want to know. Thank you.
And we've, of course, have been working with CT Shu, the designer, all through the design process. And this phasing plan has been key, and it's right in their design documents. So everybody bid, all the subcontractors bid this job knowing that these were the plans and they were going to have to
And
do these.
CT, just for some perspective, he did Osceola, the rebuild in Osceola High School while it was occupied. so-
They're really phenomenal at this type of work. They're at occupied, phased construction.
CT did a
They're
great
very
job
good
for
at
us at OHS, and he's a good guy.
I've been doing this for a few years, and this is probably one of the better set of documents that we've managed to put on the street. It's concise. They work very well with Osceola Engineering and showing what parts and pieces need to be removed. Like something as simple as the sanitary line that's connecting the elementary school that's coming through our property. Osceola was able to identify that and show that it needs to be rerouted around the footprint of the gymnasium. 9 chances out of 10 civil engineers don't get to that level of detail, and then that's when you start getting clipped with change orders and unforeseen conditions. So I think that they did an excellent job here, and we're gonna be able to eliminate a lot of that.
Yeah, you got a good team.
Well, we had also a big challenge with where this main building goes,
Yeah.
and how much additional civil work we were going to have to do.
Yeah.
So we optimized that location.
Just as a point of
more
reference,
affordable.
if you look at that swale around the back side of it, everybody thought that was just a swale that was picking up the drainage from the community. What we didn't realize was that was a bypass that's taking the drainage from the turnpike. So when you have this swell, and when you have a decent amount of rain, you've got 2.5 foot of water that's rushing through the job site. And that's something that we kind of but we went back and forth to make sure everybody understood how to do that work.
Just if
Get your work done before June, you probably won't have to worry about it.
well, they got a 2-year project.
I know.
And just like OHS and St. Cloud High School, when it was rebuilt, they did a great job, the kids were great, but while it's going through, there were lakes that weren't there before, ponds that weren't there before, and it's nobody's fault. We live in Florida, we get a lot of rain, and it's a construction site, but the kids were unbelievable. I remember I was at OHS like every week because it takes back the children then, and I remember that campus back then when we were rebuilding it, so, okay. I'm
Any
sorry.
questions?
No.
I appreciate all your work. Thank you very much.
Thanks for going out and checking on the fence.
I just have a quick comment. I met with the staff earlier in the week and got a walkthrough of all of this, so
Okay.
I was fully versed on everything, and I appreciate the work that was put in to prepare this. And I know we had a brief conversation on the phasing process, so I appreciate your work in preparing everything as well.
Thank you. It's our pleasure.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. We'll move
Get
on
back to
to
work.
Neo City Academy, and while Mr. Jeff Tucker with Gilbane Building Company is making his way to the table, we will go through our project goals and objectives. They remain the same. In fact, one of those is the EUI of 20, that's the energy use intensity. We had a great meeting this morning to talk about our envelope commissioning. So we have our team very much synchronized and understanding what the objectives are for this project for the high-performance building criteria. And with that, we'll move into our permit update.
So we're still working with the county and getting our right-of-way. We had another series of comments from them that were all addressed by Henson Walters, and we're waiting for the reply back from the county. We don't expect any additional pushback from them. I think we've covered all their issues they had on the right-of-way permit. As far as the DEP clearances, we've got all the clearances that we need until we do the final tie-ins. So we've got some permit fees that we'll have to pay when we do the irrigation tie-in and the final sanitary. Other than that, we're all squared away and good to go with permits.
Okay. With that, we'll move over to the construction update. Mr. Tucker.
Afternoon, everyone. So I've had some great progress so far. As you're aware, we're fully mobilized on site. Temporary power is there. The good news about the temporary power is it's actually going to be the permanent line as well. So we've already crossed the road with KUA and gotten the main infrastructure in, so we just have to tie into the final transformer.
Before the hurricane.
Correct. So that is all great. Foundations are all in. We've also got the casting slabs on the north and south side already established, and the panels themselves are already formed up and ready to go. So we're working through the rebar, and then looking to pour those panels here in the next week or two. Phil and our other superintendent Scott has been doing a great job, really pushing the schedule. We've got the actual slab pour next week, which is actually about a week and a half ahead of time. So that's all great news. Yep. The critical path still remains through the steel itself. Steel is scheduled to be on site the first week of December, which is about the same time the panels will go vertical as well. So come the first of the year, we'll be fully upright, and then all the steel, sequencing through. We're going to work from west to east, third story first, and then working our way out. So.
And all the structural steel shop drawings are approved.
Yep.
We just have bar joists to get through the process.
Correct. And beds are released, so we'll be having those on site here momentarily. We've already started our above ceiling BIM coordination. That's not on the list here, but just kind of giving you up to speed there. So we've already had our first meeting this afternoon, and there'll be about 3 or 4. We're going to do it by floor and kind of work through any kind of clash detection and make sure that when the material hits the ground, we're ready to go.
And that's really critical for an aggressive schedule like this, so that we can work out the conflicts before we get to the act of construction, that we can decide who's going to move and how we fit all our overhead in, and some spaces that will be pretty challenging.
And we'll have a full BIM model, so if the opportunity does arise to build the second building, we'll already have a fully engineered model to start with.
Storm structures just arrived today, so we're going to start the underground process in the near future. And then also the mock-up itself. The panels have been poured, and we're going to, once the storm is installed on kind of the west end of the property, we'll put the mock-up pad in, which will, as you're aware, will be the permanent mock-up as well. So it'll be all finished features. That'll be the exact condition which the envelope consultant will be testing against as well.
Yeah, a lot of construction projects, we use a piece of the building for the mock-up. It's so critical, as Mr. Clinch mentioned, that we get this envelope perfect the first time, so we don't have to have repeat tests. They're gonna wreak havoc on this mock-up. They'll try.
That's the place to make the mistakes.
So they'll get it optimized and perfected and leak tested before they ever do anything on the main building.
And we'll be, using water pressure, air pressure, smoke tests,
Has Little been through this
thermography.
Has Little been through this drill before?
Yes.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah, we have a very seasoned commissioning agent working with us
Okay.
for the envelope and the HVAC commission.
Okay.
Yep. I know Phil Donovan, he's done this himself on previous jobs, not in Florida, but in the north and south. So he's very, very seasoned with this aspect.
Yeah, and our superintendent is also very well versed from Gilbane in high performance building criteria.
Yep.
Phil's the real deal.
Yeah. So we are moving along nicely. We'll continue to keep the board and Dr. Pace and the facilities up to date with the schedule itself. So.
And we're always looking for opportunities. Our substantial completion is July 15th.
Yep.
We would really like to reel that in a couple of weeks early, just so we can have that smooth landing with our owner activities, getting admin staff moved in. So we're going to continue.
June 1st would be great.
June 30th is what I had in mind, but yes, that would be.
There's always a
I don't
stretch
think-
goal.
Yes, stretch goals are good.
We're already working with John Viscomi as well as the IT department, Kevin, to what perimeters have to be in place to start any of the equipment move in. Obviously, the building has to be secure in those aspects, but that'll also help with the.
Jeff, June 1st, you feel confident with June 1st?
We will sure push.
Will you push successfully?
Kind of moving down through the slides, we also have kind of the look ahead for the owner direct purchase as well as kind of the additional donation discussion. On the ODPs themselves, we're still tracking very well. We've actually already done the first change order, which is roughly about the 10% mark. Susanna, who leads that for us, has already almost hit that with the ODP log, so and that's only with a few subs, so we've got much more room to obviously do that. So once we hit that 10%, we'll do the next 10% and kind of continue to work towards that itself. So
So our goal is 30% ODP on this project.
Yep, so we're continuing to work through that, and then also, there's been, correct me if I'm wrong, there's been great discussions between Gilbane as well as SDOC for our potential donation route, and then internally on SDOC side, there's been several recent discussions on the direction that we're going to try to help the district with as well.
And we'll be meeting on Friday to firm up those protocols.
Yep.
I've got a maintenance question. I'm looking at the Gilbane National Partners list, and it's impressive, but the question I've got is relative to some of the things we've already got in some of our schools that our guys know how to work on. I don't know if these are the same elevator companies, lighting fixtures, furniture fixtures, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with these, but do we have, say for an elevator, do we have a standard elevator, Otis or ThyssenKrupp or something like that, so that we were consistent with everything if we got to work on something?
I believe at Toho, we were at ThyssenKrupp. The district uses a lot of, God, what's the one we had just installed here in the admin building?
Typically, Otis and ThyssenKrupp get
Tyson.
them.
Because I saw Cone, I never heard of Cone.
And what's nice with Tyson is they also offer the traction elevators, so that's one we want to look at so that we can reduce elevator equipment space.
Okay, has our maintenance guys looked at?
Maori elevator is the one I was trying to
Okay,
think of.
has our maintenance guys looked at this stuff to make sure this
Yes,
stuff? will work?
all our stakeholders have been very involved in the design process. We've done page flips with the stakeholders so that they understand exactly
Page flip.
where we sit down with the stakeholders, understanding that some stakeholders don't have a real good understanding of design and construction. So we, take them to their area of the project. The set of plans is very intimidating. So we take them to those 10 or 20 sheets that represent their area, their piece of the pie, so that we can
They're like
walk
cut
through.
sheets relative to what they're doing.
Right,
Okay,
and we
okay.
go
Never
through
called
the
a page
details,
flip.
we walk through the floor plans, and that allows us to get really good input, because otherwise, you send those plans out, ask for review comments, they're not good quality review comments, so sitting one-to-one with the stakeholders
No, that's great.
ensures that we have really good input.
And
Page flip
even
to
have a
sound like
meeting with,
judo.
when you have a meeting with all the stakeholders, you only have so much time, and people have to sit there for a long time waiting for everyone else's issues to be.
No, this is going to be an exciting project. I know. I mean, I think this is going to be good it's going to be great for our kids, the district, the county, everybody. I know this will be, one of those legacy projects when it's all done. So this is very, very exciting. I just, I can't help but ask some of these questions. I've been doing this a while.
To further, I guess, answer your question as well, Armstrong, GE Lighting, HD Supply, Shaw, those are all the materials that are on this project itself, so we'll continue to push those
Okay,
relationships.
so now that you're bringing it up, why GE not versus Sylvania? I mean, or Phillips. I'm not telling you one's worse or better, but are we getting, as long as you're bringing it up.
So typically you'll have a basis of design, and then you'll have multiple options per fixture.
Okay.
So that's just one of many different manufacturers that are actually specified
Okay.
in the project itself. And then on the very last page, you do have the most recent aerials as well. I think they're about a month old, so we'll be having the flyover here the next week or so. So you have an updated shots here very, very shortly.
That's great.
Do we have any updated flyovers or anything for Toho High?
About, last
think
ones
May.
were about,
May, June.
2-3 months old. But I can send you the last ones.
Yeah.
I
Be
can
happy
share
to.
with you that Mr. Clinch and I were on site today to walk the athletic fields with Jason Burt and the new project superintendent they brought onto the project. And they have made tremendous progress in a week to get the fields into the condition that we have been expecting for some time. So, as I've shared with you some sensitive conversations and communication between the parties, and I will tell you that as of today, we have made extensive progress.
Is
in a
it the
week.
same new contract that was brought on months ago? There's been no other change in between, or has there been?
It's the same contractor.
This is the same, but-
Brightview, but Gilbane has also brought on day labor to take care of a lot of the fine tuning that was needed. And
What's happened in the last week that's made the quantum leap here, it sounds like, that didn't happen 2 months ago?
It was an 8-week
Project
plan
superintendent.
with, and until all of those pieces were done, you didn't really see the progress, if you will, because you had to set the stage with all the preparatory work, which took time, and dodging the weather, of course. But now that all that is in place, everything is finally, rooted in, greening up. It's perking like it's supposed to. We've got the swales established where they need to be. That was really the big problem, was getting proper positive drainage. So all the ball fields didn't drain to just one spot and wash it out, which is what was happening
We had
before.
2 large washouts. One large washout, the baseball field, that has been addressed over the last week. The area's been regraded, it's been stabilized, resodded, silt fence. The warning track has been regraded and, material added to it.
And this
A
was done
washout
in the last week?
in the last week,
This problem's been going on since the 1st of August, 2.5 months.
yes.
And as you know, we have communicated our disappointment with them clearly, both me personally as well as through Mr. Clinch and our legal department. And I did share today that it was unfortunate that we had to get to that point before we began to see the action that we had expected to see 8 weeks ago. But I did feel very confident today leaving that the right person is on the job in terms of superintendent level. I did ask where he was 8 weeks ago. He was on another job apparently, and anyway, he's there now. We have finally made progress, and I wanted to take this opportunity to report that to the board.
Yeah, so when we look at the last report you had sent to us with all of those photos and the issues with watershed and all those type of things, if we were to look at that report of the items that were not sufficient, what percentage of them are now sufficient?
I would say 80%, and I say that only because some of the areas that have just been re-sodded are not fully established yet. There are still some joint issues. Those areas still need to be sanded and rolled so that we can put students on those fields and use those fields for the intended purpose.
Okay, so 2 questions. When will our students be able to utilize these fields? What's our best estimate at this point?
If, well, as I understand it, Gilbane will now be requesting their substantial completion inspection. The design professional, the architect, and the civil engineer will go out and review the fields to determine if they're substantially complete. At that point in time, then our building department has to do their inspection to certify occupancy. So that could be in the next week or 2, depending on how long it takes from the time substantial completion is achieved to when all the life safety items are completed, are addressed.
And part of the challenge that I apologize.
Go ahead.
That I shared with Jason today is that even once we get to substantial completion and we could say the fields are playable, the concern is on a long-term basis. If we have kids too soon on that sod that is not fully rooted,
That's what I was asking.
a year from now we'll be in a disaster, and 5 years from now we'll be redoing something.
And that's exactly
And
what
I
was
made the
thinking.
point today, again, to say, this is a long-term process, a long-term project. We want a field across the board, baseball, softball, practice, and stadium, that we can be proud of 5 years from now, 10 years from now, not just 5 days from now.
Okay. My second question to that was, we're now on the outside of our rainy season. What is our concern and what is our contingency plan when we go back into that season come spring of next year and problems arise that we otherwise can't identify now because we're into our drier season or beginning our drier season?
What's our
The
protection?
substantial completion will confirm that the project has been built to the contract documents, to the plans and specifications. So that if there are continued issues, we would then have to turn to the design professional and ask them, why isn't this working? Everything is installed per plan and spec. You were to provide us a design that works. And if we have areas that aren't working, then the onus is on the design team to come up with a solution.
Okay, so play this out for us. The issues that we've had are surrounding drainage, percolation, water shedding, swale, all of these things, primarily surrounding that. Fast forward, we get back into March, April, May, June of next year. We have our weather that we have. We identify substantial issues with the project, and we then go to the design professional, find out that things aren't in line. What actions have to happen at that point, and what costs, if any, are we looking at having to mitigate or work through to make sure that we have a school and a field and athletic program that's functional in the latter part of that year, as well as making sure we roll into the next school year we're good to go. I just want to think ahead of what those concerns might be. I'm hopeful that it's not true, but I don't want to end up in April or May of next year and be sitting there with issues and having to tear things back out and then having to chase things down and get into a big legal battle and argument and what.
They call it Boggy Creek for a reason.
Yes, sir.
Like
Yes.
down to like a high school.
There's 4 feet of fill. so.
And, you know, we have
Miss
had.
Ennis, you don't have to answer that, but you know the question, and so I would want to, I imagine these guys may as well, I want to know what that answer is, whether that's from Frank, whether that's from you guys, whether that's from you guys. I want to think ahead and us be going into this and the substantial completion component, eyes wide open, hoping for the best, planning for the worst, and making sure the board is aware of what it is we need to be prepared for when and if that time arises.
You know, one of the things it's not a static issue where you just hand over the fields and all you have to ever do from then on is mow them. There will be a continuing maintenance regimen
Excellent
that will be
point,
required
yes.
on these
We get
fields.
that, I don't think, I
Yes,
think it's.
and that might include some additional timing, which is really what made most of the improvement out there on the football field and practice field anyway. So that will still need to happen, and barring, you know, any failure
Mr.
there,
Thacker had a
we should
question.
have.
And even mowing, as simple as it sounds, making sure that the right, you know, mowing to the correct heights. This is Bermuda
We're
419.
overseeing the maintenance of these, correct?
Yes.
I'm not worried about that. Our team
And-
will do it right,
and
and the
I'm-
superintendent will make sure they do it right.
And at fence lines, you know, that we're not getting buildup at fence lines that's creating damming and not allowing those warning tracks of the baseball and softball fields to drain properly.
Okay.
But it sounds like simple things, but it's really,
No, I
the
understand.
devil's in the details.
I used to get to skip ag class to go dig ditches around the football field.
And that
That's
no
in high
longer
school.
is allowed to happen, Mr.
That's not true. He can still go dig ditches. We don't
No.
want him to.
Mr. Thacker had a question.
My daughter in biology honors got to line the field once.
Yeah.
Till you found out.
Go ahead, Mr. Thacker.
My question is, that, you know, we're saying now, we're saying these things are built to specs, which means 3 months ago they were not built to specs.
Yeah, that's-
I want to know what we have in place to make sure we're not going to go through this same thing with Gilbane on New City Academy. How did this thing get so out of whack? Some of this has got to be, I'm assuming, our fault for not watching closely enough.
Absolutely.
What are we going to do
Yes.
to make sure they don't pull this again?
Well, the large challenge was with the lack of drainage, and it was determined to be an overcompaction. Hence, the timing took place, and those are cores that were sunk every 12 to 6 inches on center, filled with a core sand. So now, not only is that allowing the drainage to occur, but for the sod to really thrive. It's allowing that aeration.
No, I get all
to
that.
take
That's
place.
not really my question.
And the other.
I mean, I get we got it fixed.
Right. The other issue was with the grading. The grading was properly installed by the site contractor, Junior Davis, but then with the landscape contractor came on.
How do we make sure this doesn't happen again, Mr. Clinton?
In the future, on future projects, we need better oversight on our field
Do
projects.
we need an
and-
independent consultant on each project that works on behalf of the school district? I
think
know
we-
there's a fancy name for it.
No, I think, you know,
and it's not
I
coming
would-
to me right now.
I would look to the construction
Owner's
manager
rep?
as the
Owner's rep.
responsible party to.
What's that?
I would look to the construction manager as the responsible party to make sure that there's oversight of that work. And quite honestly, in the early days of the field work, the oversight wasn't there. The focus was on the buildings, and we achieved our substantial on the buildings, but we did not on the fields. There was a hope that that work would follow along, and, you know, some of the times that we were out there, and we pointed out to the construction manager that this work isn't being properly monitored. There was a great deal of damage that was occurring. New flat work, sidewalks that were being installed, the next day a heavy piece of equipment running over that sidewalk and, you know, breaking everything. So, someone there to provide oversight from the construction management firm
If I
is
may
critical.
address your concerns, first of all, just because I assured everybody at the board today that we had made significant progress in a week does not mean that Gilbane is off the hook.
Sure.
Even if we reach a point of substantial completion, this project was supposed to have been completed on June 14th. We have a group of football students who've not been able to use the stadium field the entire season, both practice and stadium field.
It's not just football,
Soccer is
it's PE
starting
and
on
everything.
October the
Yes,
22nd, and we need to be able to use these fields. So there's nothing to say that, this is over and done with, but I wanted to report to the board that they have made significant progress. Second, we should have been laying sod in February or March,
Absolutely.
not June, when we knew that there's a rainy season in Florida every summer. And that's on us, our team, to put people on written notice to say, you're supposed to be laying sod this week, you're supposed to be laying sod this week, what's happened, what's your corrective plan? I've made it clear to our team that we cannot allow that to happen again. We've got to have that oversight and documentation. An email that says, what's your corrective action plan to catch up the time that's in the schedule so that we have sod growing in June and aren't just starting to plant it. So those are some things that we're putting in place on our end. And one of the things that I mentioned to Mr. Clinch during the course of the meeting is I want to walk through at Neo City Academy with some discussion about the schedule. I'm no expert, but I know enough to be dangerous in this to say, this is where it says you're supposed to be, where are we? And I think you heard as Jeff went through the presentation that they're already working to try to make up a couple of weeks and are currently ahead. But we know how quickly that can slip, particularly because we've got holidays and all those types of things to contend with. So this team is committed, and I'm committed to making sure that we stay on top of this so that we're not in this situation again.
And let me just say, I know that we've been aggressive. I know that this board, since the passage of, in 2016 of the half-cent sales tax, I know this has been like, go, 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 go. So I do appreciate all the work that you all are doing. And I think we've completed some fine projects, so thank you.
And we do operate on low bid. That doesn't mean that if we are aware of a poor performing sub, we don't have to take that bid just because they are low bid, but we have to justify why we don't. The same landscaping firm was let go by the Pirtle, who we were just here with a minute ago, on a different project. Same reason, lack of performance.
And keep in mind that, obviously I've been doing this a long time, but we've actually built schools where there's been problems and the contractor wouldn't admit there was a problem. And which is not to suggest you want to embrace problems, but at least we've got, in this case, we've got somebody who recognizes it, they're doing what they can to make it right. It doesn't mean we should be satisfied, but, I've been here long enough and I've seen a very large contractor have a problem on one of our high schools and they never came to the table. But Schenkel Schultz on the same project did. They went above and beyond what their errors and omissions insurance paid, and that's why they're still working here, because they did the right thing. This other company did not do the right thing.
So I'll just end by saying I'm glad to hear that in the last week there's been significant progress. I'm glad to hear that things are being worked through as they need to get this project done and completed, and I'm looking forward to not only our students being able to use it, but using it appropriately so that, to your point, 5 months from now we're not dealing with issues that we've rushed into utilizing the field that's going to create a long-term and expensive problem.
Yep.
Thanks.
Board, anything further?
Thanks, Jeff.
Superintendent? Mr.
No, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you,
guys.
sir. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. We'll stay adjourned, and we'll be back at 5:30 for a super exciting meeting tonight.
Super exciting.
And Jay, I
You're
can't.
killing me.